many people on. Welcome, everybody. This is fantastic. Can everybody hear me? Give me a thumbs up. All right. Welcome to, I'm sorry for anybody who had difficulty trying to figure out how to get in with wrong links. And here we are, and we are together. And that's all that's important. So what I want to try and accomplish tonight is to help you think through how to adapt your Seder to the very real fact that the Seder is going to be very different this year than what you expected, and it is going to be virtual. In most cases, you will not have your extended family around you. All the rabbis are very strictly encouraging people to take seriously the stay-at-home lockdown message and not to travel and not to go to people and not to invite people to their house. Some people are already living with their immediate family and they don't oppose risk, but all the rabbis in Toronto are all encouraging people to stay home and do virtual Seders. For us as Reformed Jews, we don't have the issue of the halachic problem of doing Seder online. And so we should approach this with a very positive attitude and with a very realistic attitude that this is the way it's going to be. Just by the way, for those of you who have more observant or traditional relatives, to know that the chief Sephardic rabbi of Israel has given permission to older people over 65, to Skype in to their children's Seders. And that was very controversial because that's coming from an Orthodox rabbi. And he was very clear that it's just for Sephardic Jews and just for people over 65. But for those of you who are over 65 and can claim any Sephardic background at all, you now have an Orthodox permission slip, as it were. So you can see my notes in front of you, and I want to just let you know, and Baruch just put on the chat function, that you can download this sheet and all of the resources that I'm going to be discussing tonight. You can download them all look on your chat function. So if your chat function is not open, please go down to the navigation bar, wherever it is on your screen, click the chat function, and you can see the CD Shul website that has copies of everything I'm going to be talking about tonight, and it's all clickable links to all of these resources that I'm going to be talking about. So I want to begin with these 9 sort of factoids about your Passover Seder, and then we're going to go into some real specifics. The first thing I want to share with you is the truth of every Seder. Doesn't matter this year, any year, it's all the same. You need to know your audience, and you need to choose the right Haggadah. It doesn't matter whether you're online or whether you're in a Seder that's in somebody's house. If you have determined that you want to have a participatory Seder, then you must have a participatory Haggadah, and you must have the kind of people around the table who are prepared to be participatory. You can want to have a creative social justice Seder all you like, but if the people around the table want to read around the table from an old-fashioned Haggadah, your expectation is unmatched to your audience. So the first thing you have to think about this year is who is going to be sharing your virtual Seder with you, and what do they expect, what do they hope for, and what Haggadah can you find to match those expectations? Do they want a short family-oriented Seder? Do they want a short kiddie Seder? Do they want a long discussion intellectual Seder? Do they want a hipster Seder? Do they want a Seder that's going to be marginal and a little bit edgy? Do they want a Seder that's going to be very traditional? Figure that out first, and then I can help you find the right Haggadah for all of those kinds of Seders. Number 2. Let's try and reframe from what we cannot do this year to what we can do. Let's think about this year not as a year in which we can't do this, that, or the other thing, but rather as a year in which we can do something unusual, something different, something that we've never done before, something that's completely strange, or even something that your family might say, well, that was weird, but this year you kind of have permission to do all of that. So I'd like to help us reframe from, oh, we can't do our usual Seder, to we can do something really unusual and creative. Third, what's your theme going to be this year? Have you done a theme before? If you haven't done a theme before, maybe this is a year to pick a theme. This year's theme will be the plagues. This year's theme will be the importance of family. This year's theme will be the importance of communication. This year's theme can be spiritual closeness. This year's theme can be the environment. This year's theme could be COVID. Whatever it's going to be, choose the theme, and then you can, of course, choose your readings and your Haggadah to go with that. Or say, this year we're not going to have a theme. Last year we did a freedom Seder or a feminist Seder or a vegetarian Seder or whatever, animal liberation Seder. This year we're just going to try and get through what it's going to be like to have a virtual Seder, and we're not going to worry so much anymore about the theme of the Seder. And you have to decide this year, are you going to do a virtual Seder with or without a Haggadah? And I say this very carefully, because if you're going to do it with a Haggadah, it's going to take some preparation for adapting and adopting that Haggadah to the online realities I'm going to talk about in a minute. You could also say, this is the year that we're not going to use a Haggadah at all. And I have given you a very easy rubric to follow, where you can stick with the rubric, but add your own things in at the appropriate times. And I promise you, we're going to go over that rubric in a moment. Number 4, set up your table using what's around your house. This is not the year that you're going to get to a Judaica store for the perfect Seder plate. So be creative with your Seder plate. On the bottom of this sheet, and I'll do it in a minute, I've given you some interesting substitutions that you can use for typical things that you put on your Seder plate. But be creative with your Seder plate this year. Look around your house. We'll look at the symbols of what's supposed to be on a Seder plate, and let's find things in the house that match those symbols. Now, my family, every year we make 2 Seder plates, one traditional Seder plate and one contemporary Seder plate, using the themes of what the items on the Seder plate are supposed to represent, and using things which are very contemporary and help us bring the contemporary notions into the Seder. Set up your table to look like a Seder. Just because you're going to be virtual this year, this is not the year to not set the table. Let the table look like you're about to have a Seder, because you know, the more we create reality, the more it becomes reality. So let's put that tablecloth on the table. Let's put those candlesticks on the table. Let's make a Seder plate with what's around the house and be creative. But this is not the year to say, oh, I'm just going to do it from my living room, or I'm just going to do it from my bedroom, or I'm going to do it on my exercise bike. That might be a kind of an interesting possibility for you, but I would counsel against it. I would say this year, sit at your dining room table and make your dining room table look like it's a Seder table. It will help create that reality. I talked about the Seder plate. Make a modern Seder plate plus a traditional Seder plate. Have them in the different homes that you're in. Say, okay, in our home, we're going to make the traditional Seder plate, but in home A, which is going to be Skyped in or Zoomed in or FaceTimed in, you guys make the traditional Seder plate, and we'll talk about our Seder plate, and you talk about your Seder plate. And there's a moment in which the 2 houses virtually are talking to each other. Number 6, understanding the limits of virtual technology. I think this is one of the most important things I have to teach you tonight. And that is, we are all very enamored right now of Zoom and of this technology. And as you can see from my glitch tonight, we had the wrong ID number. You will spend the first 10 minutes of your Seder asking the 4 questions. Can you hear me? How do I unmute? Is everybody there? I can't get on. How do I get on? Those are going to be the technological questions you're going to spend the first 10 minutes. So don't say our Seder starts at 6:30. Say our technological check-in starts at 6:30. And our Seder will start when everybody has figured out how to get in, how to unmute, how to put their camera on. This call, this Zoom meeting is not about that. We will hopefully have another one, another call, I believe, another Zoom meeting, I believe this Sunday. I don't have the exact times yet. It will be It will be on the weekly email that goes out that will help walk you through how to do a Zoom Seder. Meaning it'll walk you through how to unmute, how to use breakout rooms, how to do it technologically. That's not this is what this is for. But let me please share with you the limits of technology so you can be prepared on your virtual Seder to know the following important things. 1, everything on Zoom feels like it drips, meaning it goes really slowly. 5 minutes of silence on a Zoom call feels like an hour. And so your Seder must be quickly paced, and you must do short sections, short units, rather than one long go around the table. It will take a long time for House A to do their part, and then House B to come in and do their part, and then House C to come in and do their part, and then House D to come in and do their part. There will be long lags of silence. So it's best to understand that and to try and quicken the pace. Second thing you have to know is that if you have a free Zoom account, you have 40 minutes. If you do not have a Zoom Pro account, you will have 40 minutes for your Seder. You can come off and come back on again, but know that in 40 minutes, everybody's going to be bumped off. So save your technological questions for Sunday. Baruch, did you want to say something about that?
I just want to say, sometimes when you get a free 40-minute Zoom meeting, sometimes at the half-hour, 35-minute mark, Zoom just very nicely says, oh, you know what? I see you're using this free thing. We're just going to give you a free extra time. So you sometimes get bumped off, but if you're a new user, sometimes they throw in a free extra time to encourage you to get a free account.
Thank you for that.
That's been my experience, at least a few times.
Thanks. And so again, on Sunday, there'll be a how-to session, and you'll hear more about that. Let me tell you that attention span on virtual technology is much shorter than if I was giving this talk in person. If I was giving this talk in person, I would look at you, I would be able to go around the room and ask you each a question and get you all very, very involved. I'm looking at some of you only have your names up here, so I can't even see your faces as I scroll through. Please know attention spans are much shorter. They're about 5 to 6 minutes long per event, or per unit, or per section, or per what you're teaching. So again, you have to keep that in mind, especially with children. Children love seeing themselves in the gallery. And while you are busy doing some very child-friendly Afikomen hunt, they are going to be making faces and trying to see what they can do on the gallery view.
Yeah, to break the computer.
Break the computer, just for you to know. You cannot sing on Zoom. I don't believe you can sing on FaceTime, and I don't think you can sing on Skype either. There's a time lag, and it will sound terrible. So one person can sing, everybody else has to be muted. Again, you're going to learn on Sunday, or you can take a Zoom tutorial online. There's a million of them, how to use the mute function. Everybody should be muted except the person speaking. I can hear, if you were not muted right now, I'd be able to hear your phone in the background, your dog barking, your kid crying. You don't want that all during your Seder. You don't want to hear everybody's phones and their dogs and their wife going, you know, the chicken's burning. You want to be muted except for the person who is leading or doing that particular part.
Right. And without being muted, there's also the danger of feedback where your voice comes out through my computer back into the microphone and then creates a feedback loop. And that is not pleasant for anybody either.
Right. So just know all of these techniques. You can learn more about them by learning more about Zoom or FaceTime or Skype or whatever you're using, but just to be realistic about the limitations of technology. Number 7, preparation is essential along with setting up expectations. Talk to the people you're going to be sharing your virtual Seder with. Ask them how long they think that their attention span is going to be. Should we make this for an hour? Should we make sure it's only an hour and a half? Should we make it 45 minutes? Should we be together during the eating, or should we come off during the eating, save some screen time off our brains, eat dinner, and then come back on? If we're going to come back on, how are we going to get to each other What time? If we're going to start the Seder at 6, then at 7, are we going to all eat and come back at 8:30? Let's decide. Essential pre-planning. Number 8, I want to talk about the tension between keeping the familiar versus innovation this year. Now, family Seders at the best of times have this tension. Family Seders at the best of times have we have to do it exactly the way our uncle has done it for 30 years. What do you mean we're not going to say it this way? What do you mean we're not going to sing that tune? Versus, hey, I found something really cool to do this year, and it's really different, and I want to try it, and everybody's eyes rolling around the table going, oh yeah, there's Cousin Susan, one more time bringing in some crazy reading from somewhere or other. This year, I'm going to counsel you to keep as much familiar as possible within the unfamiliarity of the technological vehicle you're going to be using. So sing a couple of the tunes that everybody loves, read a couple of the readings that everybody expects. This may not be the year to go crazy with new things, and yet you want to be able to bring in some new themes, especially to talk about people's feelings about the Mitzrayim that we are in, the very narrow place that we are in right now, which is our own homes, which are getting very narrow on our psyches as it is. So there are Corona-specific readings. In number 9, I've given you some ideas. I want to just take a moment to talk about the question of how many Corona-specific readings can people take. So I want you to ask your participants that. I want you to ask the people that you've invited to your virtual Seder, do you want to do a whole Seder around Corona, or do you want to make it one of the things you talk about, but not the thing that you talk about? Does anybody in your circle have anything interesting to bring in, anything different? I would counsel you against facts, figures, and how horrible it is. And I would counsel you to find some beautiful poetry that's uplifting and that is making people feel spiritually centered and grounded. We at City Shul have a prayer for the pandemic and a prayer for the healers, the healthcare workers, and I will put it up on the website. And the website that Baruch has said to you, cityshul.com/passover-2020-special resources. Tomorrow I will add to those resources for you the prayer for the pandemic and the prayer for the healthcare workers that we are using at City Shul. You could certainly add those at any particular point. There are COVID supplementary readings from this beautiful article from jewishboston.com. I loved it, and I thought the readings were great. There is also a COVID supplementary reading for each section created by a woman named Maya Buin. She is asking anyone who downloads her supplement to make a donation to the UJA special COVID fund. It's well worth it. I think she's only asking for $5. But that's her email right there. You can simply email her, tell her you heard about the COVID, you heard about the Passover workshop at City Shul. You heard about her COVID supplement at the City Shul Passover workshop. So make that reference. I think that will be helpful. So you can certainly throw in some readings. I would counsel you against a COVID-themed Seder. I think it will be quite depressing and quite anxiety-producing, and I think we need to be uplifted, but that doesn't mean not to put in some readings and not to deal with it, because it's obviously foremost on everybody's mind. Before I go into the 10 tips for a suggested adapted virtual Seder, I'd like people to either use the hand raise function. So if you go on the bottom on your navigation bar and you press where it says participants, you will see, if you press where it says participants, you will see your name and you will see a raised hand. I'm going to show you. I just raised my hand. Did everybody see that? Yep. Okay. So I'm now going to unraise my hand. And you can raise your hand and Baruch will unmute you if you have any comments or questions for this section. Or you can certainly use the chat function and Baruch will read your questions out. And we'll take a few questions here, and then I'd like to do the second part of the workshop. So raise your hand if you have a question.
And while people are thinking of their question, I'm just putting up here, just on the screen, if you can see it, here's the prayer she wrote. In this time of pandemic, it's the hashtag the kids are using. So here is this little prayer on that link that the rabbi just shared. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Oops.
So I'll take some questions if anybody has. Raise your hand or use the chat function or comments, and then we'll go on to the next section.
Okay. Yep.
I don't see any hands up or any comments.
I don't see any hands and comments. Where's the...
Jonathan is just letting everybody know with Zoom you can get a paid account for a month for $20 and then cancel. We don't know how long we'll need it for. So if there's no questions or comments yet, then let's go on.
Okay, so part two here. Top hits.
And at any point, by the way, during this workshop, feel free to use the chat function for a question or raise your hand and then we'll call. So these are the rubrics of the Seder. Kadesh, Orchatz, Karpas, Yachatz. This is the way we do a Seder. I would like to suggest to you that this might be the year that each one of those sections, you do a small piece of it without necessarily using a Haggadah to go around the table. So Kadesh is Kiddush, Orchatz is wash your hands. We're going to be doing that twice, and that's obviously extremely important this year.
Yeah, and you know that what's gone around as a meme is the new Seder outline, which is Kadesh Urchatz, Karpas Urchatz, Yachatz Urchatz, Magid Urchatz, where we wash our hands between every part of the Seder.
So I just want you to know that the 20-second version you can do by singing this rubric. It takes 20 seconds. Kadesh Urchatz, Karpas Yachatz, Magid Rachatza, Motzi Matzah, Maror Korech, Shulchan Orech, Tzafon Barech, Halel Nirtzah.
Yeah, that's
Sorry,
pretty
Halel
close.
is not bolded. It should be. It's pretty close to 20 seconds, and it could be fun for the kids to sing that while they're 20-second washing their hands. I also want to tell you, I practiced for you, that the first section and the chorus of Dayenu is 20 seconds. Ilu hotzi hotzi anu hotzianu mi Mitzrayim, hotzianu mi Mitzrayim, Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. So you could use the rubrics of the Seder or Dayenu to show the 20-second hand washing. Karpas, you got to eat something green. All the blessings you have in your Haggadah at home. Yachatz, you have to break the middle matzah and hide it. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Magid, you have to tell the story. That's the most important part. We'll talk about how to do that in a minute. Rachatza, wash your hands with the blessing. Motzi, say the blessing. Matzah, eat a piece of matzah. This is easy if you just stick with the rubrics and don't worry so much about the Haggadah this year. You can have a quite adapted Seder. Maror, eat anything bitter here. Here I'm suggesting that Maror is a really good time to add the COVID reading, to talk about the virus, to deal with it there. Because it's about bitterness. Korech, you just put some charoset on your matzah. Shulchan orech, that's the meal. I'm wondering how many people will be screen saturated by then in your virtual Seders. One of my suggestions is everybody agree for the meal to get off. Mikal l'chaim, we've already had several glasses of wine, and to come back on after. Tzafun is the Afikomen, when it's eaten, found and eaten. So you have to eat a little piece of matzah at that point. Barech, say a blessing of gratefulness here, or say Birkat Hamazon, or sing our Modim. Those are all on our Passover 2020 special resources. You can download them from them or screen share them. Hallel, sing some freedom songs. Somebody get a guitar, and again, mute everybody else. Sing some freedom songs. And then Nirtza, all you have to do is basically say, good night, everybody. We did it. We did the Seder. Nirtza is the concluding prayers. Of course, you have to drink 4 cups of wine during the course of this Seder. If you look at your Haggadah, it'll tell you exactly where during those rubrics you have to drink your 4 cups of wine. And we can put that up as a resource as well tomorrow on Passover 2020. We'll just put in where those 4 cups of wine are supposed to be drunk. So here's some more ideas for me and some ideas for how to deal with the things that you're used to doing in person, like hiding the Afikomen and finding the Afikomen. So a couple of ideas. First, share recipes. There's nothing more familiar and beautiful for a Seder than your family's recipes. So share recipes, share different kinds of charoset, and ask each virtual participant or each virtual participant family or Zoom gallery viewing to make one and then share it. Show it on the screen. This is the charoset our family made. We made it because, and here's the recipe. Even though everybody won't be able to taste it, everybody will be able to experience with you an opportunity to have different dishes or different charoset recipes. Second, assign parts to different participants and mute everyone else during that part. So you can say, hey, you're invited to our virtual Seder. I want you to say something about spring and karpas and renewal. And when it comes to be your turn, even though you're doing it from your house and we're doing it from our house, I'm going to unmute you and you're going to, so people can still participate. They just have to be unmuted. 3, stage a progressive Seder, going from Zoom to Zoom, timing each one for new participants to join. This is an idea for not getting screen fatigue. So for example, you can start the Seder with the first 2 rubrics with family A. And then you can say to family A, okay, you guys do a little bit more by yourselves, and we're going to go to family B now and do parts 3, 4, and 5. And after parts 3, 4, and 5, you can get off with family B and say to family C, okay, now we're going to bring you in for parts 5, 6, and 7. This is again to avoid screen fatigue. 4, finding the Afikomen. How are you going to do that? Well, here we have to be extremely creative. First, I'm going to tell you about the prize for the Afikomen. So obviously you can't give the child or the person who finds the Afikomen a gift, but you can send them an Amazon gift card, can do all sorts of online gift cards, and you can do it right then and there, have it ready. And when they show you the Afikomen from their house, you can say, look what's coming your way. And you can share your screen with the gift certificate for whatever you have bought them for online. You can also have them share the Afikomen with you now and put online your coupon or credit, good for 1 box of chocolates when we get to be together after the coronavirus has after we've all flattened the curve. Give them a coupon or a credit to be delivered when we flatten the curve and we're allowed outside again. Or you can tell them that we're going to hide the Afikomen in our house now. And when you get to visit us after this is all over, you have to find it. In other words, don't find the Afikomen on the night of your Seder. Leave the Afikomen hidden in your house. Parentheses. Write down where you put it so that in a month from now you remember. I see some of the older folks laughing with me on that one. And then say, okay, I'm leaving it in the house. These fabulous kids have to come and find it when this is over and we all get together. Now, what if you don't have kids? That's a question, even when it's not a virtual Seder. How do you hide the Afikomen? Sometimes we have the youngest person hide the Afikomen and the oldest person has to find it. Sometimes we have a team hiding the Afikomen and another team has to find it. And sometimes we say, we have a game, a virtual game. Where would you put the Afikomen, and why would you put it there if you were hiding it? And we just turn it into a game without anybody finding it and anybody hiding it. There's a way to also make a game or a puzzle to solve it, to find the Afikomen and put that puzzle or that game online. If you see the link that I gave you to Artside Blogspot, they have a Where's Waldo online puzzle that you could put on a screen share and have anybody find one Waldo, and that will be like finding the Afikomen. Okay, Baruch, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, so I think last year we didn't have really any children, at our Seder, and we struggled with how to find something Afikomen-like. And what I did was I wrote the word Afikomen, A-F-I-K, and I came up with a word related to Passover that started with each letter of the Afikomen. So A, you can guess what word I came up with, an F, an I. So I came up with words, and then I asked a Jeopardy-like question. Let me see if I have it here. And I said, and each person had a turn to see if they could answer. So the first question was, it was Jeopardy. So I'm going to give you the answer, and you have to come up with the question. This Hebrew word for spring is one of the names for this holiday. And the clue is it starts with the letter A.
So you have to write it in the chat form right now.
Okay, here we go.
Somebody do it.
Here, I'll write it here.
No, let somebody guess.
Oh, yeah, someone's going to guess.
Okay, anybody who thinks they know the answer, this
Hebrew word for spring is one of the names for this holiday. Oh, and then you people won.
And Gita,
okay, so here I will give you all the clues.
So
Aviv is the correct answer.
Why don't we'll post it on the Passover 2020.
Okay.
We'll post that so we don't have to do that now.
Okay.
So that'll be on the Passover 2020 resources. So let's talk about Magid, the telling. So this is the main part of the Haggadah, and this is the part of the Haggadah that usually takes the longest. And by the way, I think this is the part of the Haggadah where many of us lose the most interest in the Seder. This is a lot of the going around the table, everybody reading another part or something, and it gets to be quite tedious. For this year, I think we need to be very creative, do a play, give each Zoom participant a part in advance, discuss the theme of slavery redemption, tell personal stories of redemption and getting out of narrow places, Mitzrayim, or read a very shortened version of the Magid. I've given you a source here. It's called the Minimalist Haggadah. It's a very, very minimalist Haggadah, but the Magid section is about one paragraph long, and you can certainly use that. Again, also, you have to decide who's going to say the 4 questions. Make sure everybody's muted, except for the child or the person who's doing the 4 questions. If you don't have a child at your Seder, ask the oldest person to say the 4 questions, the youngest, the newest, the tallest. You get the idea.
Also different languages.
Yes.
What languages around the table can people say the 4 questions in?
Right.
We've had some Seders where there have been, half a dozen different languages that people can do it in.
Right. So ask everyone around the table what languages do they speak, and have everybody do it in a different language. So you're going to need some substitutions this year if you can't get shopping, or you're feeling that you don't want to go out of the house. Of course, I want to say that there are a lot of people volunteering now to do shopping for people who are isolated or in their homes. And if you would like some names, I have them for you through Federation and also through our own mitzvah group. We have people who will do your shopping for you if you feel like you need to. You must stay in as much as possible, especially older folks. But I want to help you do some creative substitutions if you're not going shopping and you need to do everything with what you have in the house. So for an egg, You can use an avocado pit. You can use anything renewable and round that reminds you of spring. How about a tulip bulb, an olive pit, etc. For the bone, vegetarians for years have been doing substitutions. We have a little plastic ram from the dollar store. The bone is supposed to be in the sacrificial animal. So use a roasted beet, or use a picture of a ram or a paper mache ram, or have your kids make a fimo ram or lamb or something like that. You can use a plastic lamb chop if one of your kids has one of those little kitchen sets still. For matzah, I want to talk to you about matzah. Now, most of the time, you know that I'm quite a traditionalist, and I say you should really do things as much by the book as possible, and especially when it comes to matzah. There is matzah available downtown. I have seen it at Fiesta Farms, and I know it is at Loblaws, but it's hard for some people to get there, or hard for people to get matzah. If you are in a situation where you had no matzah, there's two options. You can bake your own matzah, knowing that the flour that you're using for that matzah is not kosher for Passover. And so this is a decision you have to make in your own family, because flour that is used for matzah, even though it is wheat flour, it is not the same as your Prince Arthur or whatever brand, Loblaws brand flour you're using. It is watched flour. It is watched from the time it starts to sprout until the time that it's cut and turned into flour. The wheat itself is watched. So there is kosher for Passover flour. You cannot get it anywhere but Israel. And you can't get it from Israel at this point. So you can make your own matzah. I want to say what a fantastic experience making your own matzah will be with children, teens, friends, whatever, your own person that you're in the house with, or yourself. So I've given you a resource for how to bake your own matzah, and I think it would be fun. I have no trouble saying that if you need to do that this year and you can't get matzah, you should certainly do that. The Israel source on Doncaster is sending shmura matzah, you know, the ultra kosher 18-minute hand-baked big round matzah. They have no delivery charge, and they will deliver shmura matzah for you. But I've given you the link to a recipe for seed crackers. These seed crackers have nothing in them that would make them not kosher for Passover. And in fact, if you ask me as a rabbi, which is better, using not kosher for Passover flour or just using seeds and making crackers, I would say probably using seeds and making crackers. Although I have to say this year, I am completely stretching my traditionalist envelope on all sides and saying whatever you come up with sounds good to me. But here's another way for you to think about you having a flat seeded cracker or a flat cracker of some sort. On Thursday night at 7, when Bonnie and I do our cooking workshop, she's going to make almond crackers that are completely kosher for Passover as well. For bitter herbs, you know, in the old days, our Polish ancestors used potato. They didn't have anything green in Poland at this time of year, so they just put a boiled potato on the Seder plate. Use a potato, use anything that's bitter. How about wasabi, romaine lettuce, whatever you have around, last year's horseradish, whatever's around, use something bitter. And for charoset, if you can't get all of the items to make charoset, the apples, the walnuts, the Manischewitz wine, then just any spread will do. Make a spread, even applesauce. You can mix nuts and applesauce if you have some applesauce up in your closet, or any kind of spread. You know what? Different communities have used different spreads throughout the ages. You can take dates, if you happen to have dates in your house, throw them in your blender with a little bit of some kind of a nut butter, and it makes a very good charoset spread. Karpas, anything green, anything spring-like if you can't get parsley. Sunflower sprouts, anything that's green and spring-like. Let me stop and see if there's any questions or comments here before I just go over some online resources for you. Questions, just put them on the side. on the chat function or comments, use the raise hand. Be happy to hear anything you have to say.
Okay, Marianka's asking about kosher wine. Does it have to be at least kosher, or any wine can do? I don't think I can stomach 4 cups of Manischewitz. Yeah,
I
so
can't stomach thinking about it, let alone drinking.
there's a lot of kosher wine that is not sweet wine. You know, there's some Israeli wines, Dalton, and
so yes, that's true, Marianka. It depends on what level of kashrut you like to keep. We in our family only drink kosher wine for the Seder because we feel like that's important to make a difference from any wine we would drink any other night of the year. We want this night to be different from all other nights, and so we drink only kosher wine. You can get kosher non-sweet wine at any of the LCBOs. There's a little bit left at DuPont. It's from South Africa, I think, Teal Lake. There is Israeli wine at Mark. And there's Israeli wine, quite a lot of Israeli wine at the Avenue Road and Lawrence LCBO, which, by the way, is a very, very large store. And so it's easy to do social distancing there and do 6 feet apart. Avenue Road and Lawrence, it has an underground park, and it's a 2-floor LCBO. And if you are going out and you're obviously not symptomatic in any way or haven't been exposed in any way, that's the LCBO that you could find kosher wine. I read today on, and I'm sorry, Bara?
Davisville, they said.
Davisville always has, yeah. Today on an Orthodox website, I read that if you can't find kosher wine and you're dedicated to having kosher wine, you should just eat some kosher raisins, or just eat raisins, because raisins are by definition kosher. So just a dried fruit. So that's, Orthodox rabbis are now encouraging people. Of course, you know, in Israel, everybody is on extreme lockdown, so nobody can really get out at all. And so Orthodox rabbis are encouraging people not to go out to buy things. So just, if you can find some raisins, there you go. Put raisins in water. It's not going to be grape juice. Or you could, if you have some grapes, which I'm not sure anybody has, you can just crush them.
Okay.
Other questions? LCB on Spadina in your Lonsdale has a good selection of kosher LePesach.
And Summerhill, there's the Davisville location is no longer, Carly says.
Is no longer open, Carly, or is no longer exists? Demolished. Okay, thank you for letting us know that. Thank you.
Okay, so.
Any other questions or comments? Raise your hand or use the chat function. Happy to hear questions or comments, challenges. Before I go on and finish up, anybody else? All right, if anything comes up during the last section, please just put it right in the chat function or use your raise hand. So let's look at some of these sources I've given you. Again, on the Passover 2020 resources on the website, you can click through to all of these, and you can also print this out. So if you decide you do want to use a Haggadah this year, what Haggadah adapts well to going online? I have to say that the Reform movement has absolutely stepped up to the plate here so beautifully, and I'm so proud to be part of it. Not only have they made an online prayer book, which we are using on Saturdays and Friday nights in our services, but they have now made a free online Haggadah. So if you look where it says online Haggadot, there's 2. One is called a Reform Visual Tefillah, and one is called Reform Haggadah. The Visual Tefillah has some artwork that you can screen share and use. The Reform Haggadah is just the Haggadah. Family-friendly Haggadah, the first link here, reformjudaism.org, has a whole list of family-friendly Haggadahs that will work online. The second one is Punk Torah, which is a great website, punktorah.org. They tell you how to make your own Haggadah for kids. Build your own Haggadah. I can't speak. Now, by the way, this section is all my personal recommendations because I am afraid when you go online and you Google online Haggadah, you're going to get some that will make you and me very uncomfortable. Not all legitimate, not all from legitimate Jewish places. So I'm giving you the ones I've researched and I feel really good about. Build your own Haggadah. I can't say enough good things about Haggadot.com. They also have an online webinar for how to create your own Haggadah. Go on their website. You can find the online webinar, which they gave last week, but they did record it. A Different Night is my favorite Haggadah of all time. If you own one already, you can now use their free online version. If you don't own one already, they are asking you ethically to please buy one and then use their online version. Go ahead, buy it, order it. It'll probably come for next year's Passover. But it's a great Haggadah. It's got fabulous readings, fabulous parts to it. And as I said, there's the Minimalist Haggadah, which is There's a Different Night. Thank you very much, Baruch. It's show and tell, fantastic. But again, go on and see all of these and see if any of these work for your families. In terms of a traditional Seder online, Sefaria, Sefaria.org. Baruch, if you could put that on the chat function, that would be great. Sefaria.org has a traditional Seder, a traditional Haggadah, sorry. I don't know any online version of the red and yellow one from everybody's childhood. But if you're looking for a more traditional Seder, you should look at Sefaria.org. And also, Baruch, if you could put JTSA.org. The Jewish Theological Seminary of America will have a conservative Haggadah, and you should look and see if they have anything online.
Okay, so I don't know if everyone saw in the chat section that Gita and David have chives coming up in their garden. We'll have to check in our garden, see if we have chives coming up. And Marianka is asking the question, what about people who are alone? Even if they do a virtual Seder, are they to eat alone?
That's a very good question, Marianka. And I would say if you are alone for your Seder this year and you're joining in a virtual Seder, I'm going to talk about that in a moment, that you might ask one other person, maybe they're also alone, or maybe it's just a couple, to stay on that Zoom with you and enjoy dinner together and then come back on later. I'm only thinking about the Seders that will have 8 or 9 windows open, that will be frenetic and noisy, and that may be frustrating. But no, I don't think it's necessary for you to eat alone. But it's an excellent question. Baruch, if you could just scroll, just scroll up a little bit on, okay, great. To virtual Seder tips.
Yeah.
Okay, so here are some fantastic resources for you to help you think through some of the things I talked about tonight and some others. So reformjudaism.org, how to make your virtual Seder lively and engaging. Fabulous article. Hey Alma is just a terrific, I read it today and I loved it, how to host a virtual Passover Seder. And urj.org, digital content to enliven this year's Seder. If you end up alone, which you won't, if you're on this call, I will tell you how you will not end up alone. But for those people that might end up alone, My Jewish Learning has a really good article on 6 tips for hosting a solo Seder all by yourself. All the basics you need are on this reformjudaism.org Jewish Holidays Passover. Here's Make Your Own Matzah at Home from the Reform Judaism website. Tomorrow, there is on Thursday, there will be a How to Make Matzah video by Rabbi Ruth Abush Magder. She could not get the correct link for me. I think that she has tried to get it to me tonight, but I can't get to it. I can't see it. So I will put it on for tomorrow. I will let you know when she's going to actually make matzah online on a live stream video. So it'll be fun for you to be able to see how to do that. Everything Jewish from the big shuls, which have tremendous resources at their fingertips, is now online on this group called Jewish Live. It's a Facebook group. Everybody who's doing anything Jewish across the world is posting on there. So you will find everything you need there. Every big shul in the world that's doing something big will list their programs there. Where to find songs, My Jewish Learning, where to find songs for your Seder. Now, let's talk about where you're going to be this year. So, City Shul is not doing a virtual Seder. We encourage you to do one of two things. We encourage you to either volunteer, and this is going out in our newsletter tomorrow, so you will see it if you're a member of City Shul. I am asking people to host people for their virtual Seder, meaning please invite another person or family or group to your virtual Seder. And anybody who's willing to host somebody else for their virtual Seder, I will match whoever needs a Seder Shidduch. So that will be in our newsletter, asking to be matched for a virtual Seder or asking to host for a virtual Seder. So there's no reason for anybody in our community to be alone at all this year. If you'd like to go to a bigger Seder, I can completely recommend these because I know the people doing them. So Holy Blossom has a first night virtual Seder, and Anshe Shalom in Hamilton both have a virtual first night Seder. Anshe Shalom asks you to register first. They're trying to keep people from Zoom bombing, which is real. People now coming in to disrupt Zoom meetings. But you can just join that night on the meeting ID. Neither one of those is being led by the congregational rabbis, just for you to know. They're both being led by either members of their board or their cantors or somebody like that. On second night, Shari Bethel in Oakville is having a communal virtual Seder, and Temple Sinai. All four of these have invited members of other Toronto congregations to please feel 100% welcome and comfortable to join their virtual Seders. So I can highly recommend that. You can find your own virtual Seder or host your own virtual Seder on seder2020.org. It's also a matching system of people who want to be hosted by a virtual Seder and people who are willing to host one. We're going to do that within our own community, but just in case you're on this call, not from our community. And last but not least is a group called Jubilong. Now, they're not for everybody, and I put them on the end because they're not for everybody. They're very out there, they really attract a lot of marginal people, a lot of beginners, a lot of people not sure, a lot of folks just trying out Judaism, people you probably would not meet. And they're having a second night Seder, as you can see, April 9th at 7 p.m. You can certainly go in there. And it should be very, very interesting and very eclectic and maybe very different. So if you're open-minded and open-hearted about that, you can certainly join them. So that's lots and lots and lots of information for you. I hope you found it helpful. Rebecca wants to know more on the Zoom bombing concept. Unfortunately, people who are bored are now hacking Zoom meetings. So they will come into your Zoom meeting. I doubt they're going to come into anybody's virtual Seder. They're coming more into these accounts, these kind of like business accounts, like the account we have. And you can recognize who they are because they never have a camera on, and their name usually is just a lot of letters or numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or something like that. In that case, you can simply remove them from the call and block them from getting back on. But I don't think it's going to happen in anybody's Seder. I think we're experiencing it in organizations now. Unfortunately, we actually had somebody on Saturday who just was in our service the whole time with lots of numbers on their screen, but there was no person that was there. Ask me. Baruch says you can set up a password to your meeting if you have security concerns. That is true. Rebecca, we are discussing among my adult children whether to use Zoom or Google Meets. We have a way to use that. I heard that there are privacy concerns with Zoom. Any comments about platform privacy? I find Zoom extremely easy to use, very user-friendly. As a host, hosting my own, I can put people into breakout rooms. I can do that right now and show you. You'll be in a room with 3 other people. I don't know if you need that. If you're virtually hosting 30 or 40 people at a Seder, you might want to use the breakout rooms, and then it automatically and randomly assigns 4 people or 3 people or 2 people or 6 people to a room. Sorry, hold on. And I find that you cannot do that on Facebook Live. You can't do that on Google Hangouts. You can't do that on FaceTime. So I like that feature. I like the muting feature, which you cannot do, I don't believe. Please somebody tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think on FaceTime you can mute people from a control panel. And I don't think in Google you can. I like it in that when you're trying to have some degree of order and not have 30 people all talking at the same time. And remember, there's a minute lag between when one person speaks and another person speaks on Zoom. I like to be able to control that. So Zoom is the platform that we're going to be using, but I don't know if somebody's more tech savvy than me, they can speak to other platforms. Ask away. Carly says, Google Meets only works if you have the institutional school business. G Suite, that's my understanding. Okay, thanks. I would love to hear from you. Raise your hand, chat with me, share your concerns, share your ideas. What are you doing? There's also party room, Marianka says. I'm not familiar with it, so I'd have to look at it. What else? Do people want to share what you're thinking of, what you're planning? Anybody want to share anything? Or any last questions? All right. I'll give people one more minute to decide if they have anything to ask or anything to add. How are you reaching out to people who don't reach out to you? Do you mean, Diane, in terms of the community, or do you mean how do you do that in your family? Lots of lost souls in the Jewish community. Well, I'm doing things like this, and this was open to anybody who wanted to come in. If anybody's on Facebook, they certainly know about all of our events are open. Our Saturday morning services are open to the entire community. Last week, we had people from other synagogues who joined us on Saturday morning because their synagogues were not live streaming. Lost souls without a synagogue right now. We're trying to reach out to them, but if they're not on Facebook, they're not looking for Jewish things, there's no way to find them. If people are looking for Jewish things, we are easy to find. And all these communal seders will be easy to find as well. Hope that's helpful, Diane. Anybody else? Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you. Thanks, Tanya. Thank you, everybody who feels like this was helpful. I wish everybody a wonderful Pesach. I hope it goes well for you. Please read your newsletter coming to you if you want to be matched or want to invite people to your virtual Seder. That would be a big mitzvah this year. Please stay at home, save lives, keep yourself healthy wherever possible. Please do not go out unless absolutely necessary. Chag Sameach, everybody. So now, Baruch, if you can